In my previous video on the Forbidden Sanctum, I covered the strategy I use to consistently clear sanctums with ease. However, for players who have mastered these strategies, there are options to take on even more challenge for greater rewards. Alternate strategies for clearing the sanctum raise the difficulty, but allow you to more consistently get Divine Orbs. And challenge runs ask you to run the sanctum under difficult conditions, but with the potential for some incredibly lucrative additional rewards. In this follow-up video, I'll be covering the remaining Forbidden Sanctum content. I'll be covering the updates to the sanctum since my previous video, the much requested written guide I've created, as well as the strategies you can use in the sanctum to maximize the number of raw Divine Orbs you get from standard runs, and, of course, the challenge runs themselves. Before we get into it, if you find this video helpful, go ahead and subscribe. It really helps out. The first thing to go over are the updates to the sanctum since my previous video. There's been a number of patches that changed the sanctum a bit, and all for the better. The first major change was to packs that give a percentage reduction to your maximum resolve. When the league launched, if you took any of these packs while your maximum resolve was at 1, it would simply kill you, ending your run right there. This was changed so that you now lose no resolve. This is important for the no-hit challenge run, as this enables you to take all of the packs for free in that run. But it's also a nice bonus for the strategy I outlined in my previous video. No matter how much maximum resolve you sacrifice over the course of a run, you will now always be able to take every single one you're offered. The next major change was to the 30% monster action speed affliction. In my previous video, I noted that this affliction affected the turning speed of the skull traps, causing them to become incredibly dangerous. As it turns out, this was a bug, and this affliction now no longer affects the skull traps. While this is good for the situations you're forced to take this affliction, I still view this affliction as run-ending and one you want to avoid. A rather unexpected change they made in a patch was to the death toll affliction. Previously, this major affliction caused you to no longer be able to gain Aureus coins, and was absolutely backbreaking. Basically, you couldn't ever take it. It was completely reworked, however. It now causes you to lose 250 resolve after 8 rooms. Notably, this does not bypass your inspiration. So if you're using the inspiration stacking strategy I outlined in my previous video, this isn't scary at all, and is definitely worth taking in a pact. And finally, they made some significant changes to the intermission phase of the Herald of the Scourge. They've both made it significantly easier to dodge by making the wave slower with bigger gaps, as well as significantly improved the visual clarity of this attack. Previously, it was often hard to tell where the safe zones were, but that is no longer the case. This makes it a lot less mandatory to just kill the Herald so fast you skip this phase. Even if you have to do the intermission, it shouldn't be too hard to survive. After I put out my previous video, there were a lot of people requesting a written version they could refer back to. So I went ahead and made a written version of my Sanctum Guide. It covers everything in both that original video, but also has been updated with all the content of this video as well, and will continue to be updated in the future if Sanctum ends up going core. The written guide goes into extra detail and covers things that I didn't have the time to cover in the videos themselves. For instance, there's an entire section in which I exhaustively go over every single affliction, which I think ought to be very helpful, and it goes into more detail than I did previously. Some afflictions are only run-ending under certain circumstances, and the written guide shows what situations you should avoid or take each affliction in. Additionally, I go over detailed information for each affliction, such as what the various debuffs actually do, and which afflictions that talk about losing resolve count inspiration and which do not. The written guide is linked in the video description and in the comments down below, so go ahead and check it out, bookmark it, and refer back to it when you need to double-check something. Now, let's start going over the new strategies I want to cover. If you implemented the strategies I outlined in my previous video and started running Sanctums, you probably started to notice something after a few Sanctums. The purely defensive relic loadout I recommend is a bit overkill once you get the hang of things. For instance, I'm regularly hitting the inspiration cap of 1000 early on 4-3. There's just no need to be that defensive once you've got a good relic loadout going and a strong character. So what else can you do with your relics if not focusing on pure defense? The answer is that you can set up your relic loadout to maximize the number of raw Divine Orbs you get per run. You do this not by increasing the number of Divine Orbs that drop in a run, but by increasing your odds of finding every single Divine Orb in the Sanctum. If you get every single Divine Orb that you could get, that's an increase over sometimes missing them. The way to do this is by maximizing the number of revealed rooms you can see on the map, at the cost of some of your defensive relics. The primary way of doing this is with the small relic affix, 2 additional rooms are revealed on the Sanctum map. Even if a Divine Orb room isn't revealed itself, this additional information is still hugely beneficial to you. Knowing where Divine Orbs are not is almost as valuable in terms of picking routes that maximize your chances on 4s 3 and 4. An alternate strategy is to stack the Merchant has 2 additional items affix instead, and fish for the All-Seeing Eye boon that reveals the entire map to you. I suspect the strategy of stacking the 2 room reveals on the small relics is probably better, but really you should use whichever of these strategies you have the relics for. You don't necessarily have to go all in on these strategies either. If you still want easy, relaxed Sanctum runs, just swapping out 1 or 2 defensive relics for ones that reveal rooms will increase your Divine Orb drops without making the Sanctum particularly challenging for a veteran player. Next up, it's time to start covering the challenge runs, starting with the one that I think is the most significant boost in profit for most players. The No Inspiration, No Resolve Recovery Invocation Challenge Run. These invocations can be quite valuable. While some such as Blood Magic are completely worthless, others are worth a number of divines. Getting these invocations on top of your other Sanctum rewards can really boost the currency you earn from this mechanic. At first glance, however, this challenge run seems brutal to complete. The entire strategy I advocated for in my previous video is completely nullified by this challenge run. You simply cannot have any inspiration at all, ever. You might think this means that you only get your initial 300 resolve and must make it last for the entire run. However, that isn't the case. Something that's very important to understand for this challenge run is that while you cannot recover resolve, you can gain maximum resolve. And when you gain maximum resolve, your current resolve will increase by the amount your maximum resolve goes up by. What this means is that in order to make this run easier, you need to focus on increasing your maximum resolve as much as possible. And instead of focusing on repeatable inspiration gain effects, you need to focus on repeatable maximum resolve gain effects. What I've found is that with even a few good relics, this run isn't significantly harder than a regular run. You gain a bit less maximum resolve than you would inspiration, but still more than enough to not be incredibly challenging. The very best relic affix you can get here is the gain 31 to 35 max resolve when you use a fountain affix. You can often get 2 to 3 fountains per floor, so this single affix ends up giving you 300 to 400 extra resolve over the course of a run. The next best relic affix you can get is gain 50 to 59 maximum resolve when you kill a boss. This may look significantly worse at first glance, but what's important to note here is that this counts mid-floor mini-bosses you can find, in addition to the end-of-floor bosses. While you won't always be able to find the mini-bosses, even if you're looking for them, this ends up as a close runner-up to the fountain strategy. Obviously, you need to prioritize either fountains or bosses depending on which of these relic loadouts you go for. I would not recommend using afflicted fountains, however, unless you're truly desperate. Random afflictions are still very much run-ending. You probably won't have enough relics to fill every slot with these affixes, however, so some decent runner-ups are the small relics that grant flat added max resolve, and the large relics which grant a percentage increased max resolve. It's actually possible to stack so much additional max resolve that you hit the cap of 1000 in a single run. If this happens and you've taken a fair amount of damage, know that you can always hit up a pact room to sacrifice maximum resolve to give yourself room to earn it back again. The next challenge run to cover is the Hidden Rooms Challenge Run. This one causes the Herald to drop additional sanctified relics and... Look, I'm gonna be honest with you. I hate this challenge run. You have absolutely no control over anything. You pick the room, sure, but you have absolutely no information about each room. Reward types, room types, even afflictions are all hidden from you. With absolutely no way to make strategic decisions, you are simply at the mercy of RNG. Something to consider here is that while successfully completing this challenge run does reward you with 2 additional sanctified relics, the completely random nature of this challenge run creates the very real chance that you will fail the run. So, since regular runs already award 1 sanctified relic, when choosing whether or not to even do this challenge run, you're weighing 1 guaranteed relic and some additional Divine Orbs versus some unknown chance of getting 3 sanctified relics and effectively no Divine Orbs. In my opinion, that is not a good trade-off, and I would recommend skipping this challenge run. If you do choose to run this one, the only advice I have for you is to stack as many gain inspiration on affliction relics as you can. You'll be getting a lot of them. Some of them will be incredibly deadly, and you won't be getting a lot of shots at good boons either. Think of it as this being all you're going to get for inspiration gain. On the other hand, the next challenge run, the No Boons Challenge Run, has the same reward with a very different condition. Not being able to get any boons is a huge detriment for a player just starting out running Sanctums. However, as I talked about earlier in this video, a full defensive relic loadout is actually way overkill. So much overkill that you don't even need boons at all. So once you're at the point where you can fill every slot in your relic altar with a relic that grants inspiration on either start of floor or upon gaining an affliction, this challenge run becomes trivially easy. You'll have more than enough inspiration even if you're playing sloppy, and really, this amounts to just 2 bonus sanctified relics. The next challenge run is the Coin Conversion Challenge Run. This one converts any excess Aureus coins you have at the end of a challenge run into bonus rewards. There are 3 different variants. One that converts coins into experience, one that converts them into unique items, and another that converts them into relics. Unfortunately, right off the bat, I have to tell you that the experience and unique versions of this one simply aren't worth doing. The experience one gives a pathetically small sum of XP, and the unique one, well, you probably get more uniques running a single juiced map, and a single unique on its own is, on average, pretty worthless. The relic one, on the other hand, is quite good. I've spent pretty much all of this video talking about relics and different relic loadouts you can use to tackle other challenge runs, and getting a loot explosion of relics is hugely useful in finding key ones that enable you to do certain strategies. This will be especially true in the event that Sanctum ends up going core, and this relic acquisition is something we end up having to do every single league if we want to run Sanctums. Something to note is that the coin conversion actually has a cap. I'm not sure what the exact number is, but I believe it's somewhere around 20,000 Aureus coins. The reason for this is that there's actually a combination of boons that allows you to generate infinite Aureus coins. As you can see in this clip shared on Reddit, if you have both the bronze coin and silver coin boon, you can just go AFK and rack up the coins. As for strategies you can use, you have a few options. You could stack Merchant has additional items relics and fish for the major boons that multiply your Aureus coin gains to try and hit that cap. Alternately, you could try to stack as many Aureus coin generating relics as you can. Or you could simply use a standard defensive inspiration based loadout and just not spend any coins. After all, I just discussed how you can easily do a run without any boons with this loadout, and you can just pretend that this one is the same as the No Boons Challenge Run. Personally, I feel like this one isn't worth the extra effort of trying to min-max. I would recommend running the usual defensive loadout and not spending any coins, with the exception of Radiant Fountains for a chance at the major boons that increase Aureus coins gained, and merchants that have specific boons that give you more coins. Next up is the Uber Herald Challenge Run. This one doesn't affect the vast majority of your run. Instead, it turns the Herald of the Scourge final boss into an Uber version of the fight. The boss will do double damage and take 70% less damage. There are a couple ways of dealing with this. The first is to simply have an incredibly powerful build capable of either deleting the final boss despite the 70% damage reduction, or tanking all of the boss's double damage hits. Another way to handle it would be to stack 50% damage reduction from enemies and or bosses on your relic loadout. This would reduce the final boss's damage to regular levels, so all you would have to deal with is a slightly longer fight. But once again, the question becomes, how worth it is this challenge run really? The reward is a 3-mod Balance of Terror, and while you could hit the jackpot and find something incredibly valuable, Balance of Terror isn't exactly a watcher's eye. Most modifiers aren't too great, and even the best ones have pretty niche uses. The vast majority of the time, you'll be getting an item that is basically worthless. My recommendation is that if you have a character that's so powerful you don't care about this, then yeah, run this, roll the dice, see if you can hit the jackpot. But I don't think it's worth running a relic loadout with damage reduction just so you can complete this challenge run. You're better off doing a regular Sanctum run and just banking additional Divine Orbs. And last, but definitely not least, we have the big one, the No-Hit Challenge Run. This one throws down the gauntlet and challenges you to complete the seemingly impossible. Complete the Sanctum without taking a single hit. You have 1 max resolve. Can't gain more, can't have inspiration. But the reward? Oh boy, the reward. If you manage to successfully complete this run, the Herald will drop Original Sin, a ridiculously powerful and obscenely valuable unique that turns all your elemental damage into chaos damage. How valuable is this unique amulet? Well, currently it's worth about 80 divines. Yeah. So that's quite the carrot on a stick here. But this challenge isn't really feasible for any character to accomplish. You should only attempt this if your build is well suited for the Sanctum. Melee characters need not apply. You should be aware that this is enough of an incentive that some players are making characters dedicated solely to being able to beat this challenge. Spark characters being particularly good at it this league. If Sanctum ends up going core, this is something I expect to continue going forwards. In the same way that players make dedicated lab runners or deep delvers to profit off of those mechanics, I expect that a dedicated no-hit Sanctum runner will be a viable way of getting very, very rich by doing content very few players are capable of. But while this seems like an incredible test of skill, a feat only achievable by those few god gamers who have mastered Path of Exile, what if I told you there was a way to cheese it? Something that gives you, a mere mortal, a chance of beating this insurmountable challenge. Well, There are two major boons that allow you to circumvent the no-hit part of this challenge run and enable you to, in fact, take multiple hits and keep going. The first of these is Silver Descry. This major boon allows you to ignore the first hit you take in each room, turning this challenge from a no-hit run into a 32-hit run, provided you spread those hits out to once per room. Still, this gives you a huge amount of wiggle room to make a few mistakes over the course of the run, while still being able to get that 80 divine item. The second major boon complements the first one incredibly well. Holy Descry allows you to revive when you lose all of your resolve, consuming a random boon to do so. While Silver Descry allows you to make occasional mistakes, Holy Descry allows you to have a room in which you make multiple mistakes and keep going. This is particularly useful for the Lycia Gauntlet, where you might find it difficult to do the first phase without taking a hit or two. Getting either of these boons, or for the obscenely lucky, both, makes this challenge run significantly easier, to the point that it can become achievable for a decent player without an obscenely OP build to actually accomplish. The best way of fishing for these major boons would be to use a relic loadout that stacks as much of the Merchant has 2 additional items affix as you can. Most other relic affixes are going to be completely worthless in this challenge run anyways, after all. Even if the odds of hitting one of these boons is low, it's better than just letting this challenge run rot in your stash because you're not confident you can do it. Take your shot, hit up those merchants, and some percentage of players will get lucky and cheese their way to an 80 divine item. That's about it for this video, however. This video ended up taking me longer to put out than I'd planned. I've been pretty busy lately, but hopefully the pace of videos is about to pick back up. I'd love to hear from you guys on your experiences with challenge runs. How have they been going for you? Do you have any tips to share that I didn't cover in this video? If so, definitely leave them in the comments down below. Every little edge we can get in the Sanctum matters. As a reminder, there is a written version of this guide available, linked in both the description and the comments down below. It'll be updated over time, so check it out if you need to refer back to anything I covered in this video. If you found this video helpful, I would always appreciate you throwing a like my way. Subscriptions continue to be immensely helpful and help you make sure you don't miss out on future videos. And if you know a friend struggling with challenge runs, why not send this video their way and help them out? To those of you who stuck around for this whole video, thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.